Welcome to the Kenobi Podcast. You know, people, tonight I have to tell you, this is going to be another one of those serious conversations that people don't want to talk about, but as Americans, as believers, as non-believers, as just people, we need to talk about some of the things that we don't want to talk about. And tonight I'm going to talk about death and dying. You know, we all are going to die one day. One of these days, we'll all take our last breath. One of these days, our heart will stop beating. And we'll open our eyes into nothingness or somethingness. But I'm not talking about that part of it yet. What I want to talk about is what happens when we die to the people that we leave behind. Meaning, you know, when you die, outside of where you wind up, if you really don't care. You don't even know. You're not even aware of what's happening on the other side. But what do you want people to say about you when you're gone? What will be your story? What will be the words that people will speak over your casket, over your body, over your memory? What would you like people to say about you? How would you as a person like to be remembered? And I think we should give thought to this right now, because right now you may say to yourself, you don't care because you think you're in perfect health. But as we saw this week, two different parallels. One, the guy that played in Jurassic Park, loved that guy, passed away suddenly. And also Lindsey Graham was planning to go and meet the press on Sunday morning. He said, I'm all right. I'll go check myself out. After that, Lindsey Graham is dead. I'm sure if you would ask Lindsey, how would you have liked to be remembered? He probably would have given you a flippant answer, some good political speech or good political retort. But now I beg to question, as Lindsey is looking on from the great beyond, as Lindsey is looking back over the precipice of the clouds, or as Lindsey is looking up, what do you think matters the most that people are going to say about him? What do you think he would have liked or would like people to have said? What will you? How will you want to be remembered, people? What would you like your friends to say? Do you have any friends? What would you like your co-workers to say? What would you like, your church members to say? What would you like anyone, your family, your friends to say? I just had a friend of mine who died. She was very close to me. She died of pancreatic cancer. And I'll tell you, she was a great woman. She loved Lord Jesus. She loved people. She was always doing something to help people. And I'll tell you something. She was just an obscure woman in the church. But when they gave that service, you could not find an empty chair because it was standing room only of people coming to honor her and say things about her life. I'm sure she never thought those things would be said. I'm sure she never even gave attention to what she would have liked to be said. And that just gives me the questions. I think about Lindsey Graham right now. America's polarized over how we all should respond. Some people think, well, you know what? As my mother used to always say, you don't speak ill of the dead. When somebody dies, all of a sudden it's hands off. You're not supposed to say anything bad about someone that dies. I love my dear old mother and I miss you, old woman, but I'm not too sure right now if that was the best advice that you used to give us. Because I think that we should talk about the lives of people who have passed on. Whether it's good or it's bad, I think we should talk about it in a real way. Why? Because to be perfectly honest, maybe you can save someone from going to hell if that person lived their life in such a way that the Bible dictates they probably are in hell. Or you can help thrust someone into heaven, into the bosom of the Savior, by showing how that person lived their life. So I think that we should talk about it. It could be a warning or it could be an encouragement. But we should talk about people that passed on, but we should do it truthfully. And as I look upon Lindsey Graham's life this week, I see so much division. Everything in this country right now is about division. America is all about division. Some people say they have a right to say what they want to say about Lindsey Graham. And some people say, it's a shame. How dare you say these things about this man who just passed on, this man that served in the Senate for all of these decades. How dare you? The man that get Brett Kavanaugh in the Supreme Court. How dare you? And so I want to take a look at Lindsey's life. And I want to offer my own personal comments, my thoughts about Lindsey. You may find this hard to believe, but I once was a fan of Lindsey Graham. I was a fan, in 2016, that Republican election, that Republican Party. So many people, Jeb Bush, Marco Rubio, Lindsey Graham, so many people running for the office of for that nomination. And then there was Donald Trump. And I didn't know who Lindsey Graham was, but I thought he came across as an honest man, a fair man, a man that knew world politics, a man that understood the balance that it takes to hold the mantle as the commander-in-chief. And as I look back on the life of Lindsey Graham, I think about some of the comments that I fell in love with him about. Some of the things that I like to hear him say. I want to remind myself of those things because I'm going to be honest with you. I've always voted Democrat. I don't anymore. I vote as my conscience dictates. But there was a time that I ever would have voted Republican. It would have been for Lindsey Graham. Let's take a look at Lindsey's life and some of the things that made me fall in love with him.
What is your reaction to hearing what Donald Trump says?
I'm disgusted. He's a jackass. He's becoming a jackass, and he shouldn't be commander-in-chief. We think that he's unfit for office, that he would be a terrible commander-in-chief. He doesn't have the temperament or judgment. What I think he's doing is being a demagogue. Here's what I think. I think Donald Trump is a political car wreck, and people slow down and look at the wreck, but they eventually move on. At the end of the day, he would be the most flawed nominee in the history of the Republican Party. I think he's a wrecking ball for the future of the Republican Party. I think he's a kook. I think he's crazy. I think he's unfit for office. And I'm a Republican, and he's not. Donald Trump, I think, is the most unprepared person I've ever met to be commander-in-chief. He's completely unelectable. And as to Donald Trump, he would be a terrible commander-in-chief. He's a race-baiting, xenophobic, religious bigot. I think Donald Trump's domestic and foreign policy is gibberish. Donald Trump's plan on immigration is stupid. That's what Mr. Trump is doing, and I don't think he has a clue about anything. He's just trying to get his numbers up and get the biggest reaction he can. The American people will not tolerate what he is doing now regarding those who have served. This is a line he's crossed, and this is the beginning of the end of Donald Trump. And every time I turn around, I'm being asked about Donald Trump, saying one dumb thing after another, and I'm tired of it. We need to reject this. To all the candidates who think that Donald Trump is telling the truth, I think you've lost your way. As to the Republican Party, if we do not reject this way of thinking clearly, without any ambiguity, we'll have lost our way. We'll have lost the moral authority, in my view, to govern this great nation. And I hope we will reject this kind of thinking. And as a party, we should reject what he says because it's not true. And if we don't reject it, we've lost the moral authority, in my view, to govern this country. For us to have the moral authority as a party to govern a great nation, we have to reject this demagoguery. If we don't, we will lose, and we will deserve to lose.
That was my Lindsey Graham. I fell in love with that man. He stood up for what he believed in, He talked about Russia. He talked about Putin. He talked about foreign affairs. He talked about what America needed. He talked about the heart of America. And he talked against Donald Trump. He talked against the man that Donald Trump is and the man that Donald Trump was. And I got to be honest, at that point in time, I could have voted for Lindsey Graham. I was sorry he was knocked out of the nomination. And as you know, the rest, as they say, is history. And Donald Trump won the nomination and became our president. He became 46. What is it, 44? I don't know. 44. I don't know. I don't know what number it became. It was a big number. But the bottom line is, that was my Lindsey Graham. And then all of a sudden, after Lindsey Graham realized he was out and Trump was in, everything changed. Now, I expected, all parties, even as you fight, once the nomination is met, you all fall in line and you all support the candidate. So I have no qualms about that. That's just the nature of the beast of politics. But Lindsey took it a step further. He is, as they say, kissed the brass ring, or the brass ass, as you want to say. And Lindsey Graham became one of Donald Trump's staunchest supporters. Everything Donald Trump wanted and fought for, Lindsey Graham never went against him, except for once in an insurrection, which he then turned around and said, you know what? I still support him. There was no insurrection. Even though on tape he said there was an insurrection. But the bottom line is, that was my Lindsey Graham. Now fast forward some 8 years later. Who is Lindsey Graham today? How did he finish? He didn't expect to die. He didn't expect that this would be his swan song. He didn't expect that this would be the things that people say about him. So as we think about someone that passes away, what would you want your friends to say? What would you want people to say about you? And this is important. Because you see, Lindsey said a lot of things in 2016 that I fell in love with. But fast forward it now to 2026, some 10 years later, I didn't recognize the man anymore. And I'm not going to sit here and say that, how to put it, that I'm impacted emotionally by his passing. But let's not talk about me. Let's talk about what people said about Lindsey Graham that knew him well, that loved him, that cared for him. Let's hear what people had to say about Lindsey, because it's important. And Marjorie was one of his staunchest supporters. They were close. They were both in the Republican Party. They both were MAGA. They both believed and supported Donald Trump. Marjorie, you tell me, what do you have to say about Lindsey?
The majority of Americans are fed up with it. But I can tell you right now, Lindsey Graham, he was a great politician. He truly was. And he was very good at making sure that Americans' tax dollars were spent. And that's one of the reasons why we are in $40 trillion in debt today, because of lifetime politicians like Lindsey Graham.
Wait a minute, Marjorie. Are you trying to tell me that that's a compliment? Now, let me ask you a question. Would you want somebody to say that about you, Lindsey, right now? Are you happy, Lindsey, that people are saying that you were a politician? Are you happy right now that people are saying that you were a warmonger? Are you happy right now that people are saying that you caused the death of tens of thousands of lives? I don't know, Marjorie, but that didn't sound like too much of a compliment. What do you think, Cenk?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you didn't mean great politician as a compliment in that sentence. So okay. No. So we're going to go to his final mission in a second, but I wanted to show you more of that interaction with Netanyahu so you get a full sense of what we mean. Let's watch.
Now, wait a minute. Before we watch it, this is one more thing I want to know. All the world is reacting in some way, some fortune to Lindsey's passing. He was one of the most staunchest supporters of Israel. I would like to think that Bibi Netanyahu has something nice to say about Lindsey. Let's go on, Cenk.
The last conversation I had with him, I said, Lindsey, we've come of age. We We have a robust economy. We can take care of our own, financing our own weapons for the defense of Israel and defense of our common interests with America. So I'm going to phase out the support, the military support for Israel over a period of years and bring it down to zero. We can do it. And he went ballistic. He said, no way, you can't do that, because he was so concerned with our security, which he believed was your security, that he actually fought the Prime Minister of Israel on keeping America's aid or actually increasing it.
Wow.
Okay, so apparently the monstrous amount of money we've given to Israel and the number of wars we've committed on their behalf was not enough for Lindsey Graham. So that brings us to his final mission. He actually found out that, he knew he wasn't feeling well.
Let's just stop right there, Ching. What I'm going to say is, you know what? He was a staunch supporter of Israel. He loved Israel. Israel loved Lindsey. And, you know, one can disagree or not disagree, but one must say that he believed in using America's money. He believed in the people that he represented to use them any way he could. Any way he could. Even he said himself, he wanted to go back to his home state and tell young mothers to send their kids to war for Israel. Now, that's what Lindsey said. Now, I don't know right now, wherever he is, if he's glad he said that. See, this is what I'm trying to say. The Bible says that we will be held accountable for every idle word. Just think of some of the things that we said that we need to really correct right now while we're living. Now, I'm sure if Lindsey knew that the man was going to be coming for him, if his soul would have been required of him, I'm sure that Lindsey would have went back and said a lot of things and reversed a lot of things that he didn't do. What about you? We don't know when our soul is going to be required of us. But I bet we do know there's a lot of things we need to clean up. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Chang.
On Saturday, and his staff tried to get him to go to a hospital, but he wouldn't do it because he had to go and meet the press on Sunday, he said. So let's try to find out what...
Now, wait a minute. So you're telling me that this man knew that he wasn't feeling well, but it was so important for him to go on a TV show that he's been on hundreds of times that he ignored his own body, telling him and screaming out, Lindsey, take me to a hospital. People, let me tell you something right now. Don't ignore your body. If you have a feeling, if you don't feel well and you know you need to sit down, that inner voice telling you sit down, call the doctor, do it. Do it. Because I know if Lindsey, wherever he is right now, if he can go back in time and run to the hospital, he wouldn't have rather meet the press rather than meet the man. Sorry, Chang.
Was it so important? Saving the world, making sure we get the peace. What was his final mission here that he pretty much seems to have in some ways sacrificed his life for? Well, as Brock Ravid, as usual, explains at Axios, he was discussing with a person who spoke, well, here, let me quote him first. A person who spoke with Graham shortly afterwards said the senator complained that he was feeling unwell. When the person urged him to seek medical attention immediately, Graham said he would do so Sunday morning after his scheduled appearance on NBC's Meet the Press. And why is that? Well, he said, I can't die now. I still need to do the Russian sanctions, get Iran sorted out, and do the Israel-Saudi normalization.
Wait a minute. You heard his own words, Lindsey's own words. You see, this is the folly of man. To really believe that we're in control of our own destiny. That we get to decide when the game is up. That we get to figure out when it's all over. In all of his arrogance and all of his pride, he railed his fist at the world. He was a master of his own destiny. Lindsey Graham said, I can't die now. How many of us really believe that? That we're that important that somehow we can determine when the heart stops beating. Just think of the the arrogance here. I'm sorry, I don't want to talk ill of the dead, but he said himself, I can't die now. Well, who are you to decide that, Lindsey? Because if you could really decide that, you would be here with us today. If you really could decide that you couldn't die now, you would be here now, Lindsey. But see, you're not God. You weren't God, Lindsey. And a lot of your actions, some people say, you tried to play God. But you made a statement here that one would think you were trying to call yourself Creator God. And your soul was required of you. And in all of your I can't not, there was nothing you can do about it.
So, okay, well, how about those three events? What is that? One is they claim he was trying to do a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. I've never seen Lindsey Graham ever be for peace under any circumstances. He was probably lobbying for a lot more war, in that case, against Russia. In the case of Iran, it was crystal clear what Lindsey Graham was for. He was going to go on Meet the Press and fight for more war and more war, and all, of course, on behalf of Israel.
Yeah, because he wanted to go back and tell his constituents to send their children to war. Now, that's what he said himself. I'm not making that up or speaking ill of Lindsey. I'm talking about what Lindsey said. Now, again, I bet you if Lindsey was here right now, wherever Lindsey is, unless he's in a good place where it doesn't really matter. And you know what? I think even if Lindsey's in a good place, it does matter. You know why? Because we're still, even though we're in a good place, for those that do make it to heaven, we're still going to be, Lindsey still has to meet the man. There is still going to come a time when he's going to have to relive the tape of his life and look at those things that he said in jest, in rudeness, in evil, in idolatry, in power, in greed. And he's going to feel sad about it. He's going to have remorse about it. As Apostle Paul says, it's a man that was saved by the fire, but still smell like smoke.
By the way, if you don't know, the Russia-Ukraine war has a lot of different reasons for it, and some of it is perfectly legitimate, in my opinion. But some of it also is driven by Israel wanting to weaken Russia. That they, in their opinion, was helping proxies of Hamas and Hezbollah. Israel's also very happy to keep that war in Ukraine going. And then the Saudi normalization with Israel is to cut out the Palestinians, make sure they don't get a state, and have the Arab states betray them in doing a deal with Israel. So, and as they continue to explain on Axios, Graham's plan was to begin an intensive diplomatic push after Israel's October elections and the U.S. midterms, with the goal of reaching a deal before the new Congress was sworn in January. Graham believed that the war with Iran had to be brought under control, especially the ongoing crisis in the Strait of Hormuz. Well, that sounds like he wants it to end. No. He had urged Trump to authorize a short, overwhelming military operation to reopen the strait if diplomacy failed.
I mean, let's face it, if someone's going to go back and talk about some of the things that Lindsey Graham said, one must understand and accept the fact that he was all about war. And he was all about destroying Iran. It's something he wanted for decades. It's something he pushed other presidents to do. And so, he was a little bit of a warmonger. And that means what? That means that for those decisions, and Lindsey Graham using his influence on the president of the United States, who can be influenced by a lot of different people, he has to take some of the responsibility for those 250 children, those girls that got blown up in that school. Lindsey Graham has got to take some responsibility wherever he is right now for the dying of the children in Gaza, for the Christians in Lebanon. He's got to take some responsibility for those things wherever he is right now. And that's what Lindsey did. And so I'm not speaking ill of the dead by talking about what Lindsey did. I'm talking about what Lindsey did. Now, the questions become, if I was Lindsey right now, would I want all these things on my jacket? What have you done to someone? What have you said to influence someone in a negative way that may have caused someone hurt, may have caused someone some damage, caused someone their job, caused someone their financial future? What have you may have done? Someone their self-esteem? Who have you wounded with your words that you've said? That one day you're going to have to give an account for. But right now, you have the time to go back and change it. You see, Lindsey doesn't have the time anymore. Whatever Lindsey said now is a matter of record. It's canon. But you have a chance to change the things you said, change what you've done, change who you spoke evil about. Lindsey doesn't have that chance anymore. And that's why we should talk about the truth of Lindsey Graham.
So, look, I've got more on his legacy, but let me bring you back in, Marjorie. So, we're all supposed to mourn, according to Washington, the passing of Lindsey Graham, and what a beloved senator. And there's all sorts of talk about how he was so nice to Cory Booker and other Democrats and what a lovely person he was. And I don't know any of that in person. And
I'm going to be honest with you, Chink. I don't know any of that either. And be perfectly honest, I can't speak for that. I can speak for the Lindsey Graham that I saw, the Lindsey Graham that was two-faced it, the Lindsey Graham that one minute he talked about Trump like a dog and the next minute he glorified Trump. I can talk about the Lindsey Graham that said, I want your mother to give your sons to war. I can talk about the Lindsey Graham that didn't really care that those girls got busted open in Iran, the Christians died in Gaza, and the people are dying all over the place. No, I'm sorry. That's who he was. That's what I knew. Now, if he was nice to people when he was walking down the halls of the Senate, I'm glad they're speaking about that. That's, you know what, Cory, if he was nice to you, then that's okay. But that doesn't change his political record. That doesn't change the person of who he was. It just means that he had a double personality.
I don't, and that could easily happen. There are a lot of terrible people in the world who are not impolite in person, right? But what I do know is that he always pushed for war. On Iraq War alone, hundreds of thousands of civilians died because of the wars that Lindsey Graham pushed. So I don't have any complicated feelings about Lindsey Graham.
Now, do you have any complicated feelings about Lindsey Graham? Now, that's his record, people. That's what he did. That's what he supported. Hundreds of thousands of people lost their lives based on a lie. And George has got to give an account for that. There was no weapons of mass destruction. We have to give an account for these things. Lindsey has to give an account for the lives that were lost because he supported a lie and knew it because in the Senate he had the information. But he wanted war. He wanted the war. Now, what I'm saying about that is you don't want to leave people with complicated feelings about you. And as you can see with Chink in America, I told you they're divided. There's so many different complicated feelings that people have about Lindsey Graham right now. Some people loved him. Some people hated him. Some people said his words were calming and soothing. Some people said that his words were bitter and jagged like a two-edged sword. Is there anybody you know right now that has complicated feelings about you? Maybe it's a child. Maybe one minute your words spoke life and next minute your words spoke death. Maybe your actions were loving and caring. Next minute your actions were cruel and capricious. Who don't you want to leave behind? Maybe it's a wife that one minute you married her with all the love in the world and you cheated on her and you browbeat her and calls her all kind of names right now. You don't want to leave that, people. You don't want to leave somebody behind that has complicated feelings about you. You want people to talk about you resolutely. You want them to say nice things about you, the kind of person that you used to be, the kind of person you used to be, the husband, the father, that you used to be, the sibling that you used to be. You don't want to leave people behind with complicated feelings. Do you, Chink?
He was a terrible person, and I don't mind saying it the day after he dies. And I think I care so much more about the people he got killed. But, Washington says that's very impolite. So I'm curious.
Well, my mother would say it's impolite too, Jake. You don't speak ill of the dead. But again, I don't know if it's speaking ill of the dead when you're speaking truth about the dead. See, this is the problem we have with anyone that dies. Anyone that dies, we just like to say, oh, they were so nice, because it's over now. It's over. But that doesn't make it all true, people. It doesn't make it all true.
What you think of Lindsey Graham's record?
Well, having served in Congress for 5 years, I can tell you the ways of Washington is there are plenty of people there that are completely nice people. They're pleasant to be around. They may be fun. They have great senses of humor. That was Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham he would talk to anybody. And he did have a great sense of humor. He was funny, fun-loving. Nice. He had tons of energy. He worked diligently on the things that he cared about.
Now, you know what? That's beautiful. Now, you got to admit that that's the kind of stuff you want people to say. He was funny. He was a jokester. He was a prankster. He was always helpful. He would talk to people in the hallways. That's beautiful. And you know what? I'm sure that when Lindsey heard Marjorie say that, wherever he was, it made him smile. It made him happy. Because Marjorie, that's beautiful. What else you got about Lindsey that brings you to tears?
But I can also tell you, I disagreed wholeheartedly with many of his policies. He was a neocon warmonger. He was a murderer. He wanted to wipe out and kill many.
Whoa. What? You just said he was a nice man. You see, I guess what she's got right now, it seems like Marjorie Taylor Greene has complicated feelings. Now, see, those are the feelings you leave people behind that they have to, after you're gone, and wherever Lindsey is, people need to go to counseling. They're going to need a therapist because they have complicated feelings. You don't want to leave that behind to your children. If you have somebody, a wife, a spouse, a sibling, a coworker, anybody that you had two faces with. One hand was loving and caring. The other hand was capricious and mean-spirited. You don't want to leave people with those complicated feelings. I'm sorry, Marjorie. I'm sorry that he left you like that. I'm sorry that Marjorie Taylor Greene now has to go and seek therapy because the relationship that she had with Lindsey Graham was complicated, and Lindsey didn't have the time to repair it.
Sent people in Iran, in Gaza, in Lebanon. He supported war more than anything. He never wanted peace. The only time he may have been interested in peace was because this war is hurting the midterms for President Trump and Republicans. However, one thing about Lindsey Graham that we can all say for sure is he was a dedicated Zionist. And that's why he worked so diligently to send as much money as possible, weapons as possible for Israel. But
now let me just stop right there. I'm going to say one thing. He was a Zionist. He really believed that Genesis chapter 12, he really believed that I will bless those that bless you and I will curse those that curse you. He really believed that if America blessed Israel, then God would bless America. And if Lindsey Graham facilitated the blessing of Israel, then God would facilitate blessing upon the life of Lindsey Graham. And that's what he believed. But let me ask you a question right now. For so many people that believe that, will that get you into heaven? Supporting Israel? Will supporting Israel be the deciding factor of whether you go to heaven or hell? If you don't support Israel, can you still get into heaven? If you don't support Israel, can you still get into hell? See, right now, Lindsey Graham could be somewhere saying, but wait a minute, I supported Israel. And the saddest words I've always said in the Bible is, depart from me, Lindsey. I never knew you. I'm sorry, Margie.
He was also, he may have been an elected U.S. senator, but he really was the greatest lobbyist that the military-industrial complex could ever have holding power in Washington. And his state, South Carolina, has over 400 military contractors, over 400 that Lindsey Graham made sure that got all types of contracts, grants.
So he was playing double-sided books. You see what I'm saying? So this is the real Lindsey Graham. There's nothing wrong with this. But she's got complicated feelings, and I can recommend a therapist for you.
All types of U.S. tax dollars to continue their work to serve the military-industrial complex. So it is an interesting thing of how everyone's being shamed and told you can't say anything negative about Lindsey Graham. Look, we can say two things. We can say, oh yeah, he was a delightful person to be around, but at the same time, I disagreed with him adamantly on many, many issues. And it's okay to say both of those things.
I'm going to have to agree with her. I think that's honest. I think it's okay to say the truth. Now, if the truth is, you know what? Some days he made me smile, and some days he made me cry. Some days he told me he loved me, and some days he treated me like garbage. I think that's what we have to say. If that is your legacy, if that's what you're leaving behind, I think it needs to be said, because it doesn't matter where Lindsey is. But the people like Marjorie and Sheik here, and Americans all over the country that have these complicated relationships with him, had these complicated feelings with him, they got nowhere to go with him now. And now you see the problem what it is. And I have to say this. I have to say this in my own personal life. My father passed away, and I loved the guy. But my siblings did not. Now, I had nothing but great memories of who he was. But they had nothing like that. The only memories they had about he was mean and vicious and vindictive and cruel. And while I was sitting there crying, they were sitting there celebrating the fact that the guy was gone. Now, what was I supposed to do? Tell him to shut up? What was I supposed to do? Tell him that just because that wasn't my recollection of who he was, that they didn't have a right to say that? No. They had a right to speak their story. They had a right to speak their truth. And to the Americans that are telling people to shut up and how dare you say these things about Lindsey Graham, if they are the ones that saying he did some cruel and capricious things, well, that's their story. But nevertheless, he's left a lot of people with complicated feelings. See, my father, he didn't know he was going to die. And he left all of us with complicated feelings that now we have to work out. And some of us are not talking to each other right now because the viewpoints of who he used to be are so paralyzing, so complicated. Some people are hurt. They don't understand how I could have seen him one way and he was another. I don't understand how I can see him experience him one way and they said they had another experience. These are complicated feelings and we don't deserve. The people that we leave behind, they don't deserve these complicated feelings. Now, if you've got this double life between your siblings, between your children, between your spouse, your co-workers, you need to clean it up now. You need to go back and fix it right now.
Yeah, two things can be true at the same time. Again, I don't know anything
about... Yes, two things can be true, Ching. But where there isn't a straight line of who this person was, it's complicated. It's painful. It's emotional. People loved him. People hated him. It's difficult for everybody to get on one accord. Think about that if it was a family. It's difficult for the family to get on one accord when half of the family says he was a cruel bastard and the other half said he was the best dad since Bill Cosby. And I don't know if that's a good example to use. But you get my point. You don't want to leave a family like that, people. You don't want to leave your siblings like that. You don't want to leave people that you showed two faces to. Clean it up.
him on a personal level. So if Cory Booker says he was a swell guy, fine. I don't really care, though.
Right.
So, George W. Bush.
Now, I think that's selfish, Jing. Because you know what? You can still honor Cory Booker's story about Lindsey Graham. You can honor that. You can say, Cory, well, I'm glad you had that experience with him. On the other hand, my experience with him is different. And I think, Cory, you've got to respect. There's some people who are not going to remember Lindsey Graham the way that you remember Lindsey Graham. A lot of people don't remember my father the way I remember my father. I've got to respect that. But I wish that he would have cleaned this mess up before he left, because it's left us all with a mess that we are still struggling to navigate out of between each other.
You always joked around with people and gave them nicknames, Big Slim and stuff. Seems like a pleasant guy, in real life, maybe. But he started a war that got hundreds of thousands of people killed. And so that is the far more relevant part of George Bush's career. Okay, so I want to give the audience more context for what we're talking about so they understand from Lindsey Graham's own mouth the things that he advocated for. So let's start taking a look at that.
Now, before you take a look at it, I want you to understand. I want you to understand where this is coming from. Now, in all fairness to anybody else, maybe from Fox News, I'm sure if I went on Fox News, Jesse Waters and a lot of different people will have the complete opposite of what Chink's going to show us about Lindsey Graham's actual sayings, his words, his deeds. And again, it's complicated. This is why we shouldn't be two different people, no matter who we are. Whether you're the president of the United States, whether you're a father, whether you're a CEO, whether you're a co-worker, this is why hypocrisy is so important to clean up. When you live separate lives, you're never yourself, and you leave halves and fractions of all the people we come in contact with. Now, Lindsey Graham's got a record that's really complicated. As I said, I fell in love with him in 2016. And I had nothing but disdain for him, and then because of what he stood for and what he supported, and the lives that were lost because of some of the things that he supported and funneled American taxpayer funds to, of which some of it was mine. But I know that may not be your view, but in the same thing, this is my story. Go ahead, Ching.
To people in my party, I'm tired of this crap. Israel is our friend. They're the most reliable friend we have in the Mideast. A word of warning. If America pulls the plug on Israel, God will pull the plug on us.
Now, you see, that's what I'm saying. He believed in that. And so many people believe in that. I will bless those that bless you. But let me ask you right now. Did God pull the plug on Lindsey Graham? He supported Israel. He said he could not die because of Israel. But his soul was required. And I really have to say that biblically, wherever he wound up had nothing to do how much he did or didn't support Israel. This is a fallacy. This is a lie that has been told in brainwashing that's come out of the Christian church among Christians, and politicians picked it up to get the Christian vote. And Israel has embellished it, but it's no biblical foundation for it whatsoever. So Lindsey Graham could be somewhere right now looking up, screaming out. But what about all of what I did to Israel? What about all the support I gave to Israel? It doesn't have a heaven or a hell to put you in, wherever he is.
Okay, so God is going to kill us all if we don't obey Israel. Interesting. Let's see what else this humanitarian had to say.
Why is it okay for America to drop 2 nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki to end their existential threat war? Why was it okay for us to do that? I thought it was okay. To Israel, do whatever you have to do to survive as a Jewish state.
Senator, again.
Now, hold on. You see what is again, this man said he had no matter what okay, we dropped the bombs. We had to drop the bombs, Pearl Harbor, all of that. But I don't think anybody should relish in that. Lindsey, I'm sorry. Did you ever go to see all the devastation over there in Nagasaki? But again, this was part of who he was. This is part of who Lindsey Graham was. You see, this is how people can remember us, by the words that we say. And sometimes they remember more crueler things than kind. Don't you want it to be the opposite? Don't you want people to, listen, to say you were a fair man, a kind man, a compassionate person, a person that always tried to help his neighbor? Or do you want to say he was just one of the worst bastards I ever met? It's up to you right now. As long as your heart's beating, it's up to you.
And military officials say the
Whatever you have to
technology
do.
has.
So there is an indisputable monster advocating for nuclear war against what? The Palestinians.
Chink has got some complicated feelings. This is what I'm saying to people. Now, if you go to Fox News, Chink, they're going to be telling you something totally different. They're going to take context of over his political career, and they're going to say some of the things that he said, how beautiful and kind and loving and American he was. These are the complicated emotions that people that die leave behind for other people to clean up and deal with. And sometimes we can't deal with it. Sometimes we have to deal with it for the rest of our lives, dealing with the pain and the loss and the emotional travail that people left us with a hot potato because they didn't have the guts to go back and say they were wrong. They didn't have the guts to go back and say, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have said that to you. They didn't have the guts to say, my position on this was wrong, and I repent of it. I'm sorry if I caused any harm. They didn't have the guts to do what's right, and their soul was required of them.
They barely have stones left. When you nuke someone, you incinerate children, babies, grandmothers.
I don't think Lindsey
And that unmitigated monster is being celebrated in Washington today.
Chink,
by the way, I haven't not seen any.
I gotta tell you, Chink has got some complicated feelings. He's got some complicated feelings about how he's been affected by the life and the political career aspirations of Lindsey Graham. And I have some complicated feelings, maybe not to the same degree, but I can certainly understand it from if I drill down on it.
Keeping over the 23,000 dead children in Gaza. And so that's, and of course, I mean by Washington. The American people have turned on these issues. We're not anywhere done yet. Let's keep going with more from Lindsey Graham's.
I'd like to hear more, Chink.
So I just want to say, I feel good about the Republican Party. I feel good about where we're going as a nation. We're killing all the right people and we're cutting your taxes.
Whoa, now you see, this is coming out of Lindsey's mouth. This is what Lindsey said. Now, I have to ask myself the question. I wonder if wherever Lindsey is right now, who were the right people we were killing, Lindsey? Was it the Muslims? Was it the Iranians? Was it the people in Gaza? How about those Christians over there? I mean, who were the right people we were killing? And you wasn't doing anything about my tax. I'm hurting, Lindsey. A lot of Americans are hurting because of the wars that you left us with to deal with, adding to our national debt. This is on your jacket, Lindsey. You left a lot of complicated feelings. You laugh at that.
Trump is my favorite president. We've run out of bombs.
Now you gotta ask yourself, what happened to the Lindsey Graham of 2016? The Trump is my favorite president. You see, that's a complicated feeling. And so all too often, fathers leave this complicated feeling. Mothers leave complicated emotions like that with their daughters, with their friends, with their sisters, with their brothers. It's all complicated. One minute he said he loved me. Next minute he told me he hated me. I don't know what to believe anymore. Oh, Lindsey, I wish you would have went to the hospital because maybe you would have had the chance to clean up this mess that you left us with.
We didn't run out of bombs in World War II.
Wow.
Killing all the right people. By the way, he's speaking at the Republican Jewish Coalition. and they cheer wildly. Who do you think the right people are? Almost all Muslims, except, to be fair, also some Christians as well.
What about that?
And wild applause for the warmonger, genocidal maniac, Lindsey Graham. And people ask us to be polite today?
Chink has got some personal feelings. Chink has got some complicated feelings. He has a right to those feelings. He has a right to feel this way. I don't think anyone has the right to tell him how to feel. All too often, we try to tell people when they pass away how we should feel. I don't think that's fair. I don't think Lindsey's really thinking about any of us right now, no matter where he is. I'm sure he's got some regrets. But I don't think he cares too much about us wherever he's at right now. But what about the mess that he leaves and we leave behind? Look at poor Chink here. Look at the pain on his face. Look at the understanding this man has. This man is hurting. He is hurting because he didn't know what Lindsey Graham was real.
Okay, and then if you forgot about the Iraq War, one last one.
I believe that Saddam Hussein is giving aid and comfort, training and assistance to al-Qaeda murderers, that he has weapons of mass destruction. He is lying when he says he doesn't, and he will never voluntarily disarm. 500 inspectors, 5,000 inspectors are not going to make him disarm. He is a danger to our country and the world.
Now you got to take into consideration. He's got to, this is complicated. And you know what I have to be honest with you about? When we say these things in our lives that we know deep down in our conscience is wrong, maybe we come back and we sit down after we say something to a child or a spouse or a friend. We say cruel things. Maybe we come back and we say to ourselves, something speaks in our head and say, you shouldn't have said that. You know that wasn't true. I'm sure that his conscience back then said, Lindsey, you know that's not true. You've got the intelligence reports. You know there's no weapons of mass destruction. But he never said he was wrong. He never said he was sorry. And because of that, tens of thousands of people died. Now, wherever Lindsey is right now, he is facing judgment on those things he did, that he did not go back and clean up. See, God afforded him time to go back and fix the mistakes of the past, but he took it for granted that he was not going to die. He said, I can't die. Don't take for granted, oh, I wish my father would have cleaned up the mess instead of thinking he was going to be around. Oh, I've got time to fix this. You don't have time to fix this. So fix it now or become like Lindsey.
Of course, we found out who was lying, and it was Lindsey Graham. He was lying about the Iraq War. He's lying about the Iran, or he was lying about the Iran War now. My co-host, Anna Kasparian, wrote on X, good riddance, and people were outraged, Marjorie. Absolutely outraged. I didn't see any outrage for the dead children.
Anna was hurting. Anna's got complicated feelings. She's got a right to say that. My siblings were like good riddance too. And I was sitting there crying. I couldn't make them say that. I couldn't say to them, how dare you say that about him? That'd be wrong on my part. It was the man that they knew. By the same token, they couldn't tell me that I couldn't say I loved him. Oh, I wish he would have cleaned this mess up.
Gaza, I didn't see any outrage for the hundreds of thousands slaughtered in Iraq, let alone the thousands slaughtered in Iran and Lebanon and Gaza and all the wars that Lindsey Graham was in favor of. And I didn't see nearly as much mourning for the American soldiers and service members who died in Iraq and now Iran. So what do you make of his entire legacy? And then I have one more question for you after that.
Well, I wholeheartedly agree with Anna. And so just to be clear, the Lindsey Graham warmongering and blatant murder is really, you can call him a murderer. And other politicians like him, they're murderers because they demand it. They demand war. They demand that our tax dollars.
That's so hard. That's so hard to be remembered like that. He was a murderer. He was in a, just think about it from a personal life. They have to say something about what would they say about you, dad, mom, brother, sister? He or she was an abuser. They hurt me. They said this, they did that. They were a hypocrite. Oh, clean this up, people. Don't leave this behind. You should not do it, because if you do, you may go on to the next place, but you're going to be held accountable for the mess. We all are going to be held accountable for the messes we live behind. And you don't want your children saying he was an abuser. And if you were an abuser, you've got to fix it now. You've got to take on it. You've got to say you're sorry. You've got to make it right. You've got to apologize. You've got to repent. If you were a hypocrite, then stop. If you're a liar, stop. Make it right now. Don't leave people with this mess in their hearts and minds.
Pay for war. They demand that American-made weapons be sent to kill people. And you're absolutely right, Jank, about all the innocent children in Gaza and in Lebanon that have been bombed and brutally murdered by the IDF and Israel as a whole is unspeakable. And I will tell you that it's that wing of the Republican Party that so many of us voted to destroy. We wanted to end it. And we thought we were going to do that with President Trump. And boy, have we been wrong. One of the great things that Lindsey Graham was very good at was buddying up with Donald Trump. And he was able to sway Donald Trump to his side.
Listen, it don't take a lot to sway Donald Trump. Now, I know Lindsey did it, but it doesn't take a lot. See, she's complicated. She's fighting and straining, trying to find something good and trying to justify what she knows about Lindsey that was evil and bad and detestable. We do that about people that left. We try to find little things to justify. I remember looking at people about my father and saying, he was a complicated man, as a way to excuse the things that he did that were wrong. Shame on me. No, he wasn't a complicated man. In some ways, from their story, it was cruel and capricious. Marjorie, no. No, Marjorie. There's a lot of things we can blame Donald Trump for, and America's got a lot of complicated feelings about him, and I hope that he has the time to clean it up before we have to deal with his loss. And I mean that. He's done a lot to hurt America. He's done a lot to hurt and divide Americans. Families. He's broken up families. He's broken up friendships. All because each one of us may see a different side and different story about who Donald Trump is. And now families are not speaking. I've lost friends because our stories about Donald Trump, our vision, our perception about who he is different. Oh, I wish that Donald Trump would clean this up before his soul is required of him, whenever that will be. I don't know. Only God knew. Lindsey Graham said, I can't die. Maybe our president is saying that as well, but one day we all have to meet the man.
To his view. And that's been one of the biggest betrayals that, for people like me, we consider it a betrayal. We consider it one of the worst things that have happened. And it sickens me every single day. And it wasn't supposed to be that way. So in that first clip that you showed, when Lindsey Graham said to people in my party, he was talking to me. He was talking to me and a few Tucker Carlson.
You see, the girl is hurt. The girl is hurt because that's personal. That's personal. On the one hand, she remembers the fun Lindsey Graham, the jokester. Now she's getting into the meat and potatoes of how it affected her world, how it affected her life. Oh, Lindsey, I wish you would have went to the doctor.
of us, because we have been so outspoken against his views and his demands for murder and for war. And it should be constantly called out. It's not wrong to call it out after someone's death. As a matter of fact, it's very important to talk about it, because Lindsey Graham has been elected in Congress since 1993 and became a senator in 2003. So his views and his warmongering and his demand for murder around the world, and which also led to murder and deaths and PT, all sort of horrific trauma for our American troops. He's responsible for that. And the future of this country is something that we should all take hold of and say, enough. We have had it with this. We want no more of it. But I can tell you right now, there is no end in sight as Donald Trump continues this war. And he wrote a letter tonight and put it out today, ending the MOU, ending the memorandum of understanding, ending the ceasefire, and going straight back into full-scale war with Iran.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that later in the show. That is an epic disaster headed in our direction and brought to you by people like Lindsey Graham, who always loved disaster as long as it led to profits for his donors, which leads me to my last question on this topic. So, Representative Green, we're told by journalists and reporters in D.C. that no, the money barely affects the people in Congress. Yes, the donors that give millions of dollars might have slight influence and they might get their calls returned, but really it's no big deal to the politicians in D.C. And so in the case of Lindsey Graham, he was funded by the military-industrial complex, the defense contractors, and by Israel. So, it was always hard to tell who he cared more about, the defense contractors that always wanted war, or Israel who always wanted war. So I'm curious about your take on who he really served there. And I get that it's both, but I'm curious. I sometimes got the sense that he served, in his case, the defense contractors even more than Israel. And every politician in my,
it doesn't matter.
Almost every politician in my experience has some sort of top donor that they work for, that they have like these little niches, right?
I disagree. The bottom line was, listen, you're looking for trouble now. You listen, you've done enough, Chink. You've said enough. And I'm sorry. I'm going to end it right here because you know why? Because we've got to realize that some things just don't matter no more. You've said enough. There's no more, there's nothing else you can do to degrade Lindsey Graham's memory, no more than people can do to puff up Lindsey Graham's memory. It is what it is. It is what it is. The bottom line is Lindsey Graham was, to some people, a fair man, to some people, a cruel man. Some people, an honest man, some people, a liar. To some people, he was a peaceful man. To some people, he was a warmonger. To some people, he was a helping man. Some people, he was a hurting man. Some people talk about Lindsey Graham's life, and they say that the worst to come out about his life is yet to come. I don't care about those things. What I care about is the shame and the sadness that we all feel over the death of a man that touched all our lives. Now, you may say you never met Lindsey Graham, but you know what? Your taxes did, because he pushed those money to go to wars. Every time you go to the gas prices right now, Lindsey Graham is touching your life. Every time that you go and talk about health care, Lindsey Graham is touching your life. Every time you think about the price of medicine, Lindsey Graham is touching your life. Oh, how I wish he would have had the time to clean this up. You know, the Bible recounts the story of a rich man who had everything, who had every single thing he could ever want while he was alive. And there was a poor man named Lazarus who stood outside the gates of the rich man, who didn't have anything, who the very sores on his body were licked by the dogs to bring soothing. He didn't have health care. He didn't have medical coverage. He had to beg for food. He didn't have good clothes. He didn't know all the right people. But he was a humble man. And the rich man, he had everything, power, money. He said to himself, I'm not going to die. I can't die. Well, both of them died at the same time, the Bible recounts. And you see, the rich man was shuffled off to hell. The beggar was shuffled off to paradise. And you see, it goes to show what's remembered about each person after they were gone. People remembered the rich man as being prideful, capricious, demanding, because that's what he showed. His soul was still the same after he died. The beggar was a good man, a kind man, a humble man. In spite of his condition, he was still a good person. Two different people, two different destinies. How you wish the rich man would have cleaned up his life and helped the poor man. He had the power to do it. He had the money to do it. He had the influence to do it, but he never cared. I just say this to you people, and you know what? Death is serious business. Some people wonder if Lindsey Graham's in hell. Some people say he's in heaven. To be honest, it's complicated, isn't it? I think it's more about his life comes out. We'll be able to make a determination, but I can't right now. But what I will say is this. You don't want people to have to wonder where you wind up. You don't want people to have to wonder if you are in heaven. You don't want people to live the rest of their lives alive thinking that you're burning in hell. So you have an opportunity to live your life a certain way. So beyond a shadow of a doubt, people will know with comfort where you wind up when your soul is required of you. That's the only way you can do that is give your heart to Jesus Christ, man. Live for him. But it's just not saying I give my heart to Jesus Christ. That's the easy part. The hardest part, you got to repent. You got to stop. You got to turn around. See, Lindsey Graham, I'm not sure if he turned around. I'm not sure if he ever gave his heart to Christ, but I'm not sure if Lindsey Graham ever turned around, changed his mind, stopped some of those behaviors. Because if he didn't, and if those behaviors were willingly and continually, Lindsey Graham right now is in a dark, bad place, man. He's in hell, and he's left hell for so many Americans that view his life from two different spectrums. Don't you do that to somebody. Who do you need to clean up a mess to, man? You don't know. Tonight could be your last night. Tomorrow morning, you can leave out of your house and bam, something goes down. You may say, you know what, I'll talk to somebody this weekend. You may not have this weekend. Lindsey said, I'm going to meet the press tomorrow and I'll go after that. He didn't have those extra hours that he thought he had. That's what you should learn from Lindsey Graham. If you learn anything from Lindsey Graham, learn that you don't know how much time you have. But know that one day your soul will be required of you. And you're going to have to give an account for the mess that you left behind. So clean it up now, people. Clean it up now. Now, I know the flags are flying half-staffed at the White House and all over the country of federal buildings for Lindsey Graham as a token of high esteem and honor. I'm sure his body will be placed in the rotunda of the Senate. He's been there long enough as another place of honor. But all of those things, and I'm sure world leaders are going to come from all over the world to pay their respects to Lindsey Graham. But those things does not determine his heaven or his hell. They don't. It's too late for Lindsey Graham wherever he is right now. He can't go back and change anything. But you have time. Don't be like Lindsey Graham. Don't leave a complicated mess for anyone to clean up.